From WKYT Podcast, this is Uniquely Kentucky. I'm your host, Amber Philpott. Hello, podcast listeners. I hope this episode finds you doing well. Here in Kentucky, it has been a wild few weeks. We saw 3 winter storms back to back, then historic flooding hit areas of eastern Kentucky hard, and all while still in the middle of a global pandemic. We all know 2020 was a doozy, but man, oh man, it seems 2021 is shaping up to be quite the year so far as well. Here in Kentucky, March 6th was the anniversary of the state's first confirmed case of COVID-19. And after that, life forever changed. We here at WKYT didn't know what was in store for us. What we did know is that we had a job to do every single day, and that was to report the news. And in the last year, we have had a lot of news to report. Early on in the pandemic, myself, my co-anchor Sam, and our chief meteorologist Chris started a Facebook Friday chat where we did just that. But it was also a way to connect with our viewers who at the time were being asked to be healthy at home. So for this episode of Uniquely Kentucky, we have come together again. I've asked my TV husbands to join me as we look back over one of the wildest news years that we have ever seen.
Uniquely Kentucky with Amber Philpott is brought to you by the WKYT News and Weather apps, available on the App Store and Google Play.
Welcome into Uniquely Kentucky. I have some guests that you may or may not know. I hope that you know them. They are my partners in crime every single night on WKYT, Sam Dick and our chief meteorologist, Chris Bailey. Gentlemen, welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure and an honor.
Always good to be here. This is my second go around on this podcast.
That it is.
I did a Christmas episode with you once.
But right. It's also Sam's second go around.
Dang
so don't.
It. I thought I had a leg up.
Yeah, don't get too excited there. So we wanted to, it's been a year since the first COVID case was found here in Kentucky. And so, you know, early on, we kind of got together when we were all in sort of lockdown, if you will, and we got together and we would do our Facebook Fridays, right? Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of fun with that. And then, you know, we kind of let those go by the wayside just because there was a lot of other heavy news going on at the time and we just didn't think it was appropriate. So we thought that it being a year, maybe we would just talk today and see how the year has gone. So, fellas, we've made it.
Phew.
So if I had to ask each one of you, when you look back to Sam, you weren't even here March 6th when the news came out. You were actually off work.
It was a Friday, and I had taken a long weekend so that my wife and I could go see her parents in Illinois. And I distinctly remember, even though I was off that day, I was keeping track of email. And sometime between like 5 and 6 p.m. that day, that night, I saw an unusual email I had never seen from our news director that said, "Everybody in the station, don't go anywhere, stay here." And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I knew it must have been big.
Right.
And you were here, of course, for the first one from your
Absolutely.
home county.
Yeah, and that for me is still so surreal because in many ways it feels like it was just yesterday, and then in many ways it feels like it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
But to sit here and at the time when the governor announced that we have our first confirmed case, all we knew was that the person was in isolation in the hospital here in Lexington. So that kind of led us to believe, okay, it could be someone from Lexington, it might not be. And then as word kind of started to trickle out and I left the set and I started to get word and we found out that it was indeed someone from Harrison County. And my thought immediately went to, I don't even know enough about this. Are my parents going to be okay? Yeah. Is my husband going to be okay, who works there every day? And I immediately thought about every single person in Harrison County and thought, I don't know. I wanted to be worried, but I didn't want to be worried because I didn't know enough about it. Because at that time, I remember very distinctly, we were saying, well, the flu kills more people.
Right,
you know, and that just goes to show how much we have learned in a year about this.
So did the governor go live?
Yeah, we got
the
word.
Announcement?
Yeah. We got word right before the 5 o'clock, probably during the 5 o'clock news, that we were going to have a news conference, and we sort of maybe suspected, but I don't think any one of us could have ever understood what one live news conference on a Friday afternoon was going to set off for the state, for this country, for many individuals.
The chain effects from that one. I remember, to show you how times have changed, that day I had done school visits. on that same Friday.
Myself included, yeah.
I had done several school visits that day, so I was not working on air, but I came in here and was in the booth up there, the producer-director booth, watching everything unfold from up there, just in regular street clothes. And it was amazing to be in there at that exact moment when you're seeing the governor make that announcement, and Amber's doing, the first of what turned into many, many long days for you guys taking notes from Governor Beshear's press conferences.
I don't think I've gone through as many legal pads in my almost 18 years of news as I have in the last year, and that is kind of making fun, but also being completely serious.
You're keeping those,
I do.
right?
I keep all of those, actually. I've always kept my notepads from my years doing news.
Those are historic now.
They are.
I mean, to a point, I mean.
Yeah. To your point, too, I think back on, again, how things have changed. And this is a podcast, so we know that you're listening, but we are still sitting in our respective spots, very socially distanced away from each other here at this point in time. But Chris, I think back, you and I that very week had gone to Moorhead together.
That's right.
We had done a school visit over there for Career Day at Moorhead State University. The Friday of the first case, I had been to 2 elementary schools, my entire day. It was Read Across America week, so I'd been doing that at school. And you just think about how we just went and did, and you didn't think anything about it, and then, wow, the schedule gets cleared.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the following week that I had a guest come in for, at the time, the 7 o'clock half hour, and it was Dr. Fox. Am I right about that?
That's right.
Yes.
And so we were used to having people come in to the station as a guest for that program and for other things. And as it turned out, he was, I think, our last guest, who then got COVID-19, and it almost killed him.
It did. And we have been fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to sit down and do a follow-up with Dr. Fox. We just had him on our one-year look-back special. And I remember also, at the time we didn't know that it was necessarily Dr. Fox, but we sort of, kind of counted back and could figure out. But we had to do some serious thinking here about, you had been in contact with Dr. Fox. How close had we come in contact with someone? And Dr. Fox did. He spent about a month in the hospital. He was one of the patients that was early on, received a very early treatment of convalescent plasma, a donation from another patient who had COVID-19. Didn't know if it was really going to work, but Dr. Fox certainly credits it, with helping to save his life through all of this.
And one of the reasons I bring that up is that I remember after he was here, and I remember at some point soon after that, our news director said, there are going to be no more guests. And at the time I thought, well, that's weird. That's right. You're kidding me. We can't have guests anymore?
No guests.
And now look how common it is. We do Zoom with everybody.
Well, and we joke about when we're all fully vaccinated about getting back to our normal spots. But then I think, well, maybe Sam doesn't want me back over there. I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to stay over here.
I remember how
yeah.
weird I thought it was that we were being separated, because literally when we anchor together, normally we're a foot apart or so. And Chris, you're not too far away. Right. And now we've kind of gotten used to this, our own little worlds.
It seems normal.
Yes.
This seems normal now.
I wonder
it's amazing.
I wonder for both of you, because I often tell people, that we are a family and that we treat each other like family, and we do see each other, I think, more really than we do our own, family at home. What has this year taught you in terms of, I know for me personally, I didn't realize how I take for granted small things. I'm very close to my mom and dad, and being able to spend the night a couple of weekends through the month with my parents is a big deal, and we have not done that. And I realized that, not being able to hug and love on them, I miss that more than anything. And I've been able to do a little bit more, but I didn't realize I took my friends for granted. I took my best girlfriends of how much we would do together. So I know that is something coming out of this that I'm very aware of.
And something small for me, but I'm a handshaker. If I see someone, when I go to Meijer, the greeters, I would always go up, shake their hand, slap them on the back, talk to them for a little while. Being a good Eastern Kentucky boy like I am, I never met a stranger. But you had to treat everybody like a stranger, essentially, for the past year.
Last week, I spoke to a group of Boy Scouts at a church during my dinner break, And at the end, the scout that had arranged for me to come, he's working on his Eagle Scout, so he's about 17 or 18. I instinctively reached to shake his hand, and he looked at me weird and kind of touched my hand, and I realized, Amber and Chris, for the first time in a year, I was trying to shake somebody's hand, and I knew it was kind of wrong.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is weird. I'm a lunger. I will hug anybody.
Me too, yeah.
And I will say, Monday, this podcast goes out on the Monday that I was in Estill County live for flooding coverage. You know, there were a lot of people that made their way over to us to be live with us. And for me, I just can't help myself, and I hugged every single one of those people. Now, thankfully, they told me after the fact they'd all been fully vaccinated, but that's just me. And I do that before I even think anymore that you have to take a moment and think, well, maybe A, they don't want me to hug them, and maybe I shouldn't lunge at them. But that's one of those things for me that has been really hard as well, because it's just in my nature to do that.
And it's so hard to see people in need like that and not want to go give them a hug. That had just lost their home in a flood, or they're ripping their whole floor out of their flood. I interviewed a woman in Salyersville who had basically taken over her father's home of 45 years and lost everything that her father had passed down to her, was lost in that flood. You know, how do you not want to hug someone like that?
Absolutely.
And just tell them it's okay, or going to be okay.
You asked Amber about some of the things we've dealt with, and the holidays were just totally different. For Thanksgiving, we traditionally have 20, 25 family members come to our home from different states. It was me and my wife. That was it. Christmas, the same thing. And, I felt some responsibility to you all, because I don't know if people at home or people who are listening realize, but most of the people who work at the station have not been here.
Right.
It's just been a skeleton crew, and we've been part of that skeleton crew. So the last thing I wanted to do was give my co-anchor or chief meteorologist COVID.
Absolutely.
And so it's that shutdown really makes you respect not being able to get up and go like you used to and hug people and see your loved ones. I haven't seen my wife's parents in a year.
Sure, absolutely. And that's another thing. You bring up a good point. I don't think that people always, they wonder about us in here. And we have, we still are wearing masks, and we're very respectful of one another and what we're doing, because as you said, it is a skeleton crew in here. And so, knock on wood, we've been, very fortunate, I think, here. But I think it's probably also given us a better sense of our relationship with everybody we work with, because we have kind of taken that sense of responsibility that, if I get sick, I don't want you to get sick, and we just have realized that about one another, and we've kind of all stuck together through this.
Your brother and sister's keepers, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You're all looking out for each other.
And how about this, Amber? How much do you miss not being able to follow Morehead State in the NCAA tournament, or, as you have done in the past, cover the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I mean,
which will not be the same this year, of course.
It's 2 years in a row.
I think about it because last year, and I am not making light in any way, but last year, right before the SEC tournament, the tornado had hit Nashville, and I remember thinking that was like the worst thing that could happen, right? A tornado hitting through a major area like Nashville. There were already going to be implications about what we were going to do and how we were going to cover that going down for the SEC tournament, and we were thinking that was the worst thing. And then a week, just a few days after that, we get our first case, and then the next week during the SEC tournament, I'll never forget that one day, maybe the 12th or 13th, where it was like news was coming so fast in terms of what was happening with the NCAA that it was mind-boggling. But yes, I mean, I thought about that watching Morehead State win on Saturday night, and I remember what it was like 10 years ago. I mean, we were there for it, but I mean, I wanted to drive to Morehead. I wanted to be there on Sunday when they came home. We were there. We did a special show, when they were in the selection show, and it hurts. It hurts that you can't do the same things, because I take a huge responsibility in being able to go do that, and for all of the people that can't go, being able to bring them the sights and the sounds of the tournament. That's a huge responsibility to me, and I hate the fact that that's different this year, but it's different for a lot of people.
I remember early on you were saying, well, I think we're going to go over 100,000 deaths. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, surely not.
Yeah.
If someone had told us in early spring last year that we were going to have 500,000 Americans dead, I would have been like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. And I hope that people realize too that, I've said this a lot, and I've posted about this a lot, there are days that have been really tough. I mean, in that, I think, Sam, probably March, April, May window of time when we were doing, the full extent of the governor's news conferences, and some days were really tough, really tough. I've shed a lot of tears for a lot of strangers, a lot of people in this state that I don't know. I'm never going to know them, but I can tell you honestly, I've gone home and I've prayed for a lot of strangers, and I've prayed for this state a lot through this whole thing.
Sure.
Because it's tough.
And for me, the parent of a senior in high school, this last year, just trying to get some sense of some normalcy here. So at least we're salvaging a couple of months of in school, right? So that's a good thing.
Do you feel like she's been robbed?
Of course, yeah. And the thing of it is, I think more of that way than she does. She's very even-keeled, very easygoing with it all, and just takes everything in stride. And I try to as well, but at the same point, it's like, I didn't get to go. She's on the dance team at Henry Clay, so we had no dance team basketball games to go to this year. All the football games were very limited, and you really didn't have very many fans at all. So, yeah, you've kind of been cheated out of a year and change of high school.
But I bet you were really looking forward to, before the pandemic, for her senior year.
Oh, absolutely. Without question, yes. And now making that transition later this year to college, you're just like, okay, let's try to get everything back to close to normal as we can, So get these vaccinations. Let's keep wearing those masks. Let's get this thing behind us, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's what we got to do.
I don't want to discredit, we have lost a lot of Kentuckians that sadly, they're not going to be with us. A lot of people have suffered in terms of job loss and business loss and that kind of thing. But I also always try to find a little positive. So is there anything in your all's lives that, because of changes of the way we've had to live our life the last year, that maybe has become a positive to you?
Well, Zoom to me has been not only professionally a breakthrough with guests, but also with my kids. I have his daughter that lives in Los Angeles and a son in Wisconsin with his wife and my grandson. And so we've done Zoom calls, and it's not the same as seeing him, but it has been helpful.
Yeah.
It's been something.
Yeah, and it's also made our jobs a little bit easier too.
It has.
I tell people it's amazing that I don't know why we weren't using Zoom. I don't know why we weren't using other things, because there have just been a wealth of people that we literally could not get to us, or we couldn't get to them, and they're literally a click away. And I know for this podcast in general, I probably will not do the podcast the same way ever again, because there are so many people that could never get here, but because of technology, that's
technology
opened a huge
that was
door.
always there.
Technology,
we just weren't forced to use it.
Yeah.
And now the world's never going to be the same.
And we were also kind of stubborn. We're like, well, we can't do that because the camera won't be perfect, or the lighting won't be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, folks.
I think the world has given us a pass on what has to look good anymore. And I think we've learned that, and we've given ourselves some grace in the news world.
I mean, we were heading that way anyway, because this is a face for radio, not TV, that I got back here, all right?
I have appreciated, or found a newfound appreciation for being home. And that sounds crazy, because a lot of people are like, well, how could you say that? We were kind of forced to stay home. But in a different way, we all got the opportunity to come into work every day, and we got a chance to not work from home and stay at home. But I have a new appreciation for just being home and being okay with being home. I think before, our lives were really, really crazy. And I'm not sure that my life can ever go back to the same kind of schedule, because you realize what you weren't getting to do, what you weren't getting to enjoy. And so that has just been, for my husband and I both, it's just a nice appreciation of home.
It slows life down.
Yeah.
It is, and everything else is faster paced, but now your personal life is slowing down a little more, because you were limited to what you could do. Like for me, it's like I don't get as upset as I used to over the thing. Listen, if the old Chris were watching this UK basketball season, look out.
You might not have made it.
I mean, I would not have made it.
You might not have made it.
He might be in jail.
He might be in jail. The weather office may not even exist at this point. I mean, it may be in shreds. But, now it's like, okay, you know what? We got bigger problems to deal with.
Yeah.
That's just.
But isn't it amazing how much we've adapted? Like even wearing a mask. Well, I know when that first started, I was like, "Are we going to have to wear a mask?
Yeah,
is everybody
right?
going to wear a
Yeah.
mask?"
And now it's just not even a thought. It really
is what you
isn't.
do.
And now we're color coordinating our masks with our
Oh,
outfit.
yeah. Well, that was the first thing I thought about a long time ago was how do I get a good mask? And also finding the right mask that fits you properly and works for you is like a big deal. So.
And once this is over, what do we do with all the masks?
I don't know. But a lot of
know?
people have made a lot of good money off of
They
them,
have.
so kudos to them for that. I
Exactly.
remember, though, in the beginning when you couldn't really find masks, and I
Oh, yeah.
remember going to some people that I knew that, they were sewing them at the time, and now it's like you can pop onto any website, any
Yeah,
store that
right.
you normally
It's-
shop at has their own version of masks. So, yeah, that's really interesting how quickly people jumped on board with that for sure.
I'll count it as a blessing that I haven't lost a close friend
Yeah.
or a family
Absolutely.
member
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
COVID.
Yeah.
And as we have reported many times, you don't have to be 65 or 70 to lose your life to COVID. You can
No.
be younger. You can be somebody who's very physically fit and had no problems. And so, my wife's parents are both closing in on 80, and thank goodness, knock on wood, they're healthy.
Yeah.
And I know how much you value your parents, and Chris,
Oh.
your mom.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a blessing.
Yeah, my dad is a lung cancer survivor. He's 72, and my mom is of age as well. And so it weighed really heavy on us that we could not bear to think about if we would happen to take that home
Yeah.
to them and have to live with if something happened. So, in those very early months, I mean, we would go home and we would sit out in the yard with them and we wouldn't even hug them goodbye.
Sure.
And it was really tough. And they're fully vaccinated now. And I remember the day that they were both fully vaccinated. And I still worry about them, but I just felt a little bit
sigh
come
of
off the
relief,
shoulders,
Yeah, absolutely.
for them. And it was a joyous kind of moment because it was like, this has been a really tough year. And that was something to celebrate for them,
Yeah, no doubt about it. Same with my mom. Fully
Yeah, you
vaccinated
took your mom
now.
to get
I took her
her.
to get. Yeah, I took her to get her shot.
Did you
A
really?
couple weeks ago, absolutely. And we waited in line a little bit at the horse park, but hey, it was worth it.
Yeah.
That's what it's about right there.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that we have brought good information, timely information in a compassionate and respectful way. So many nights that we've been out here, Amber and Chris,
Yeah.
that's been our mission, is to make sure that people get the facts, hopefully.
I think that, a lot of times maybe people think, well, we're just out here and we just, read the news or whatever. But I hope that people get, especially about you and I, Sam, for that matter, is that we realized early on this was critical. The information, at that time it was afternoons with Andy at 5 that we were, he was live every day at 5. And that has obviously since changed now to the 4 o'clock hour. But, we gave up our entire newscast to be able to bring our viewers exactly what the governor was saying. And in those early months, I mean, there were days, Sam, where, it probably took you and I, if we went and kind of rehashed everything, another whole hour to go over everything. And you feel this really huge sense, again, of responsibility to get it right, make it digestible for our viewers. So, because we had never been through this before, none of us have.
No,
and so there was a lot of information coming really quickly there. In that beginning weekend, the next week, and then the months to follow.
It's been a long year.
It has. And, again, we, just put on our Appalachia Rises telethon, and I'll use this again to say thank you to anyone who watched, who donated, and helped us raise an immense amount of money, more than $1 million for flooding relief. But I said to Rocky Adkins when I was in Estill County, what more can Kentuckians take? We're in the middle of a global pandemic. We had back-to-back ice storms,
That's right.
flooding.
Devastating flooding.
We never know what's right around the corner for us in terms of weather, but, I said this about the people of that region, grit and grace, but I really think that applies to most of Kentucky, that we all are born of a little bit of grit, and we all have the ability to give one another a little bit of grace, and that's what pulls everybody through this.
I think I know I will look at the world differently, and if I get a chance to go to a home UK football game
Yeah.
and tailgate a little bit, I'm going to think you know what, this is kind of special.
You're gonna
How do we
value it.
feel about? I have a little bit of anxiety about going into crowds and going into.
Do ya? Yeah,
I do. I have
yeah.
a little bit of anxiety about that.
I think that kind of depends on what the situation. You know,
Yeah.
this is almost mid-March, and so that's still many months away. So
Yeah.
I think things are going to change a lot. Hopefully, even better. I don't know.
Hopefully
It'll be
everyone
interesting.
goes and gets the vaccine.
Yeah.
That way, you know, your anxiety level will drop because, you know, it's all about you're going into, let's say, we know the bunch here that we work with. If we all go to a game, we're like, oh, okay, you know, we work every day. We know we're all vaccinated at some point before then. It's the big crowds. You're like,
Yeah.
you're looking at the guy, you know, over beside you eating a hot dog, and you're thinking, all right, did they get the vaccine or not?
Yeah.
Or the guy that turns around and coughs. Just
Absolutely.
because some people cough.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the nature of
absolutely.
it. You know, are you worried then? So I don't know.
Have to wait and see.
Great.
Yeah.
The next time I go somewhere and someone's eating a hot
Someone's
dog,
eating
now
a hot
I'm going to
dog,
look
Amber's
at
gonna
them
look at me and
because
think, "Great,
Chris
Bailey,
says that.
thanks."
Well, we just want to take a moment and, like I said, we enjoy getting together and talk, and we just thought at the 1 year mark it was maybe a good chance to touch base with everyone. And thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for listening to Uniquely Kentucky. We'll see you next time.